You get nightmares thinking about the Shopify Cart API? I think today might be your lucky day. What's up my nerds, it's Bozy, your Shopify developer freelancer from Germany, and today's video is all about understanding and using the almighty Cart API. As a Shopify developer beginner, I was always confused about handling cart interactions, like how adding stuff to the cart, removing stuff to the cart, or updating the cart. When I finally understood how to use the Cart API, it was like a whole new world opened up to me. If you're also struggling with handling proper cart interactions in your theme, say no more. First, I'm going to explain what the Cart API is, why we need it, and how to interact with it. Then in the next step, I'm going to show you all the actions there are. Adding items, changing items in the cart, updating the cart and its informations, removing items, and even clearing the whole cart. In the last step, I'm going to show you the full dynamic power of the Cart API by building a cart drawer from scratch. As always, keep watching because in the end, I'm going to show you how to build this neat little discount input in the cart, because that's also now possible with the new cart update discount functionality. Quick disclaimer before we start, all the code you see in this video I'm going to upload into a repository. So if you're interested, go have a look and check out the description. Now let's jump right in. First of all, let's talk about what the Cart API even is. In every Shopify store, you basically want to give the customer the ability to add items to the cart, remove items, or update the cart node. Since the Liquid language is a templating language and therefore not suitable to interact with stuff, Shopify gave us the holy Cart API. Like any other API, the Cart API also has endpoints which we can use to tell the server what to do. For example, with the cart/add.js endpoint, we can tell the Shopify server, put these shoes in the cart. And the Shopify server goes, right, I can do that. This may sound a little bit complicated on the first glance, but it's actually not as bad as you may think. You can even do it without using any JavaScript at all. You just need two things. First of all, you need the method, the endpoint URL, and the data for the specific action. We can get all of these things from the Shopify Cart API documentation. Second, you need an element that can create these requests. The perfect element for this case is the form element. You can also use an anchor element with an href attribute, so we will look at both cases. There are basically four main actions we can use with the Cart API. The first one is the cart/add.js to add one or multiple items to the cart. Then we have the cart/change.js to change one single line item in the cart. Third, we have the cart/update.js, which we can use to make various updates to the cart. Lastly, we have the cart/clear.js to clear the whole cart. To show you the Cart API in action, let's look at every action separately and I show you how to make them work. First, we're going to check out how to add items to the cart, and therefore I'm starting my development server. If you don't know how to develop locally on your machine, go check out my video on the Shopify CLI and I will teach you how. To show you all the cart actions, I basically built this little cart here, just basic with a heading and all the line items. And typically what you want to do is go to a product page and add something to the cart. Since this is already there in the theme, we do something else. We go to the collection page and now we want to add a quick add to cart button for every product. What do we now need to add stuff to the cart? As you can see in the documentation, we have a post request with this URL. So we can start building our form element, form, and then we have the method post, and the action is /cart/add. Then we can close our form. How does the form now know what to add to the cart? We can see that we once have a quantity parameter, which is the amount of the variant you want to add, and the ID parameter, which is the variant ID of that variant. Important, you can only add variant IDs and not product IDs to the cart. We can add these parameters in a form element by using input fields. Here we have the input with the type hidden and the name of ID, and the actual value is product selected or first available variant.id. Then of course we have another input with type hidden because we don't want to show it, with the name quantity, and the quantity should be 1. Then of course we need the add to cart button. So here we can take a button with the type submit. And here we can say add to cart. When we now reload the collection page, we can see that we have these add to cart buttons now. And if we click one, we can see that we get redirected to the cart page and the snowboard helmet is now in the cart. We can also try this with another item. We can put the shoes and you can see the shoes are now in the cart. But I want to show you how to improve this a little bit because Liquid actually gave us some stuff to work with. When we hover over the /cart/add, we can already see that it states use the routes object and don't hard code it. And if we visit the routes object in Liquid, we can see that we have these URLs here. And one URL is the cart add URL. So instead of doing this, we can simply put routes cart add URL. But in our case, we can even go a step further. Liquid offers predefined form tags. With this, we can generate a specific form tag for that specific case, and we can see that we have a product form tag. And the product form tag generates a form for adding a product variant to the cart, which is perfect for our case. Instead of writing the form like this, we can put form, product, and then we need the actual product. Then of course we need to close it. And when we go back now to our collection page and add something to the cart, it still works. So by using this product form, which Liquid just gave us, we have everything covered already. And let me be clear, you don't have to use plain input elements. You can also use other form control elements. The most important part is that you get the right data. Let me show you by implement a variant selector. Instead of using this plain input here, we can also check if there are variants and then output a selector. We can simply do this by checking if the product only has a default variant. This means that the product doesn't have any other variants, but if it has other variants, we can output a variant selector by creating a select element, since this is also a form control element. And don't forget, the name has to be ID as stated in the documentation. And inside the select element, we can simply loop through the variants, and for every variant we can create an option with the value of the variant ID, and here we can just put the variant title and close the option. When we reload now, we can see that the product with variants has this selector now. So this is on S now. When I click add to cart, the S variant gets added, and when I click L, for example, then the L product is added. Super simple variant selector, but as you can see, it's not only working with the plain input, you can use any form control element inside the form. The most important part is that it has the correct parameter name and the correct value. The last thing I want to show you is how to add multiple items to the cart. And when we look again at the documentation, we can see that it actually accepts an items array. So we can add multiple items where we need the ID and the quantity. We can simply do this by going into our input fields again. And here we can put into the name the items. Then we put the array index of the position of that item. So here it's basically 0. And then also the ID. And here we can do the same items 0 and the quantity. And then we can copy this and say the next item in the items array can be another variant ID. I quickly grab the ID of this snowboard here and put it hard-coded in here just to show you. And when I click now here, we can see that both items got added to the cart. I showed you everything so you can add stuff to the cart now. But what if we want to change the items in the cart? Let's do that next. To show you how to change a line item in the cart, I quickly added these cart line item actions. We have a minus, a plus, and a remove, but when we click these, you can see that nothing happens yet. Since we want to change a line item, we can go back to the documentation and we can see that we have a cart change endpoint, which is also a post request. And remember, with this, you can only change one single line item at a time. What we need here again is something to identify the line item and the quantity. And to identify the line item, we have 3 different scenarios. We first can use the line item's variant ID, so let's do that. In this case, I'm going to show you how to use an anchor element with an href attribute to do this. Instead of hard code the cart change URL again, we can go to our routes object and we can see that we also have a cart change URL, so use this. For the minus, we can just put routes cart change URL. Then to put the parameters, we can simply use the URL search params. So we do a question mark, then quantity. Since we just want to subtract 1, we can simply use the item quantity minus 1. And of course we need the ID, which is the item ID. The same thing we can do now for the plus, but here we can simply put, instead of the minus, a plus. We now go back and click on the plus. We can see that the quantity increases, and also with minus, the quantity decreases. But by using the variant ID, we can create some problems. That's why they also suggest to use the line items key. What is the reason behind that? A cart can have multiple line items that share the same variant ID. You don't know how this works? Let me show you. I already have the snowboard helmet in the cart, and when I click on the snowboard helmet, I just created this field here, which adds a line item property to the line item. We can put test, add to the cart, and when we go back to the cart, we can see we have two line items with the same variant ID. And when I click here on the plus, also the other line item gets affected. To prevent this, the documentation states to use the line item key because the line item key is unique to the actual line item. We can simply go ahead and exchange this for key. And when we go here now again and increase this, only this line gets affected. The last option the documentation gives us is using the line property. Every line has a position in the cart, and the line attribute is the one based index position of that line item in the cart. Here, for example, it's 1, 2, 3. We can simply target a line item by its line by doing the following. Instead of using the ID, we can say line, and here we can use the for loop index. Since the for loop index is also one based, it's perfect for our use case because we are looping through the actual cart items itself. When we test this out, we can also see that this works super fine. I would therefore recommend at all times to change a line item, always use the line property because it's the most accurate one. And what if we want to remove a line item completely? That's pretty easy. We can simply use this URL also and put the quantity to 0. But also here, Liquid gave us something to work with. If we visit the line item object, we can see that we have a URL to remove. Let's change this for item URL to remove. And as you can see here, when I click on remove, the whole line gets removed. Now I want to show you how to make general updates to the cart and its informations. We can see that we have a cart update endpoint, and the update endpoint is really versatile. With the change endpoint, we could only change one single line item at a time, but with the update endpoint, we can do multiple updates at once. We can do this by creating an updates array with the ID and the actual quantity. But not only that, we can update the cart node, update cart attributes, and even update discounts in the cart. I will show you later how this exactly works. For now, I want to show you two use cases. The first use case is how to change multiple line items at once. For this case, I created this button here which states increase all quantities by 1. So when you click this button, I want to increase all the quantities of all line items at once. You need an array with updates for this. I put this form with, again, the routes cart update URL and the method of post and a submit button. But now what's with the inputs? For this, we simply want to iterate over the items in the cart because we want to affect all the items. We can do item in cart items, and for every item we want to do an update now. So we put an input, of course with type hidden because we don't want to see it, and the name now is updates as stated in the documentation. And again, we need the line item's variant ID or the item key. We use the item key because it's more secure. So open this up and say item key, and the value is the actual quantity. So the value is item quantity plus 1 because we want to increase everything by 1. When I now go here and click this button, we can see we have 3, 6, 4, 7, 5, 8. Simply put an input with your update in the form element and you're good to go. And even do multiple updates at once, as you can see here. The second thing I want to show you is how to update the cart node. So the customer can leave you a note for his order. To show you this case, I created this cart node element, again with a form with the cart's update URL and the post method and a button to add the note. And in this case, I would recommend to use a text area. And the documentation states that we need a node parameter. So the name is node. Here we don't need the value because the value is actually inputted in the text area, but here we can display a cart node if there is already a node in the cart. Then of course close the text area. Now when we reload, we can put I want this order for free. And when we add the node, we have the node now in the cart. As I said before, the update endpoint is really versatile, so you can do a lot of stuff with it. So I cannot go over each use case here, but just dive into it and have fun with it. The last thing I want to show you is how to clear the whole cart with one click. For this, I created a button here, which is called clear cart, and the cart clear endpoint is pretty straightforward. You basically also have a post request with the cart clear endpoint, and there's no parameters at all. So you basically just can use a form element with the action and the method and a submit button. That's it. When I click this button now, the whole cart got emptied. I showed you now all the different actions you can take to change stuff in the cart. There's just one big catch. All of these actions actually redirect to the cart page. As you could see by examples, I always ended up on the cart page. And sometimes we don't want this. To show you how to build more dynamic experiences with the Cart API, let's build an AJAX cart drawer from scratch. Since I just want to focus on the main functionality of the cart drawer, I already built something, but as I said before, if you're interested in the code, check out the description. I upload everything into a repository. But to give you a quick rundown, I basically just created this HTML layout with the cart, then all the items in it, and the total at the bottom, also an empty state. I created this custom cart drawer JS, where I just built this custom web component. If you don't know how to build custom HTML elements, check out my video and learn something cool. Here I basically just have an open trigger, an overlay, and a close button. So when I click this icon here, it opens up and it closes again. Then of course I put the icon to click on and also a little cart item count where we want later count the cart items. So the basic functionality is already there. Now we run through every action again we discussed before and adjust it to the cart drawer. So let's go to the collection page again. Here we have the quick add to cart button. When we click this, the item gets added, but we get redirected to the cart page. What we want to achieve instead is we want to click the add to cart button, open the drawer, add the item and show the item in the drawer. Since there are some steps involved, I also want to transform this into a custom HTML element, so we give it some JavaScript action. Let me quickly transform this into a snippet to have a better overview. Let's say render ATC button. And then create a snippet with ATC button. Of course, let's say the product is the product because we need a product parameter. And to give it some functionality, I want also to create a custom HTML element, so we can already wrap this in ATC button. Of course, we need to revert back here. We don't want to add multiple items. We want to add just one item, quantity. In our custom cart drawer JS, we also now want to create the element. So we put class ATC button, extends HTML element. And of course, call the constructor. In here, the super. And lastly, of course, define the custom HTML element with the name we already gave it. It's the ATC button, and then take the actual class. Let's test this real quick. So I'm logging ATC button and we can see here it logged 13 times. 13 times is apparently the product size of this collection. As I said before, we need to do 3 steps. First, prevent going to the actual cart page. Second, add the item to the cart. And third, open the drawer and show the item in the cart. First, let's prevent the event default for the submit form. So let's say this submit form, of course, this is the query selector form. And since it's a form with the action /cart/add, now in the connected callback, we can simply add another event listener to the submit form. Add event listener. On the submit, we do this handle submit. Of course, always bind to this. And here we define the handle submit functionality. Of course, we also want to listen for the event to prevent it. As I said before, the first thing we want to do is prevent the event default. So we do event prevent default. This achieves that we don't land on the actual cart page. Also, let's console log prevent it to check if it works. When we go to the page now and click add to cart, we can see we are still staying on the same page and it's prevented. But there's still nothing in the cart drawer. This is the second part. Now to add the item to the cart, we can actually now look at this fetch example of the documentation. Here it states we have a form data which looks like this. Then we do a fetch call to the endpoint with the post method and these headers, append the body, and then the item gets added to the cart. So let's do this. Let's take the form data and the ID is this submit form. Query selector, the input with the name ID, of course here the value, and the same thing for the quantity. When we now click on add to cart and reload the page because we are not landing on the cart page, we can see that we now have this item in the cart. We can do the same for the shoes, add to cart, nothing happens. But if we reload now, we can see that the shoes are in the cart. This worked like a charm. Now for the third part, we actually don't want to reload the page. We want to open the cart and show the items in the cart. This is where the magic begins, because we have a bundled section rendering inside the Cart API. What does that mean? We can basically request the HTML markup for up to 5 sections and replace it with the current section. So what we can do is take the HTML of the new cart drawer and replace it with the old cart drawer. Let me show you. Since we can only fetch sections, we can create a new section called custom cart drawer, or however you want to call it. And here we simply render again the custom cart drawer snippet. All this markup again in the section. How can we fetch the section now? Let me show you. In the documentation, it states that we can use the sections parameter with the actual section name. Let's go here. After the items, say sections, and then it's custom cart drawer, because that's the name of the section we created. Now to see what is going on here, let's create another data, and then let's just console log data. Let's do this and click add to cart. Here we can see in the response, we have the sections parameter with now the custom cart drawer and the HTML markup for that section after the add to cart. So with the new item already in the cart. We can use this HTML markup now to re-render the cart with the new content. I don't want to control the re-render from the ATC button. I rather want to control it from the actual custom cart drawer. Because what if we want to re-render it from multiple locations with one spot to re-render the cart? What I like to do here is the following. Let's go ahead with the document, and then the document element. And here we want to dispatch a new event, new custom event. And let's call this cart re-render. We can also give some details about the new event. So let's say the detail is the actual data we got from it. After adding the item to the cart, we dispatch a new event called cart re-render. We can now go back to the custom cart drawer and listen for this event. Let's go into the connected callback and say document, add event listener. And here it's cart re-render, and here we just go cart re-render / bind this. And of course in the cart re-render functionality we say first, just to check, console log, you have to re-render now. What happens here is every time, doesn't matter from where, the cart re-render event gets fired, the custom cart drawer now listens for it. And we reload now and click add to cart, we can see, oh, you have to re-render now is logged. Perfect. Since with the event, we also get the data, we can now take the HTML markup for the section, or the custom cart drawer section, and use it. What I look to do here is create a fake element first. So just a div, and also get the new HTML. So event detail, and as we remember, we have the sections, and inside it was the custom cart drawer section. Of course, we also have to give the event here. So let's quickly console log the new HTML so you can see. Click on add to cart, and now this is the whole HTML of that cart drawer section. Now we can take the fake element and say the inner HTML of this fake element is the new HTML. Now we have the old element and all the new HTML inside the fake element. So now we can just replace it. We just take this element, so this custom cart drawer, the query selector, and here we choose the content of the inner element. So all the line items in the footer, because we don't need to re-render the header. Let's say this element, the inner HTML, is the fake elements, same element, inner HTML. And lastly, of course, we want to open the drawer. And since we have this open drawer function here, we can just simply call this open drawer. Let's reload now. And after clicking to add to cart, the drawer opens and we have everything inside of here. Let me show you again with this snowboard because this is not in there already. Add to this and now everything works perfectly fine. We are not finished yet because the cart actions actually don't work yet. So let's fix this. And here our cart re-render event comes into play again. As you can see here, we just have buttons that basically do nothing yet. What we are now going to do again is create another custom HTML element with the functionality of the cart actions. Let's go ahead and say this is cart actions. And here we can define the class again. We have three things to cover now. First, we have the minus button, the plus button, and the remove button. To give these a distinctiveness, I want to add something so we can select them easier. So let's say this is data minus, this is data plus, and this is data remove. Now we can simply go ahead and select all of them. We have this plus button, minus button, and remove button by just simply selecting these elements. And in our connected callback now, we want to add a click event listener to all of them. Again, for all three elements, I added the event listener click with the this handle change functionality. And here we have the handle change. Let's console log change just to make sure. So we click remove, it changes. When we click plus, it changes, etc., etc. Since now we want to change a line item again, we have to go back to the change endpoint. And if you remember, we want to take the line and not the ID. So let's do that. Here, let's create a form data element to save all the data in there. As stated here, we need the line. Here we need the actual line information. So let's get this with a data attribute. Let's go back to the HTML markup and say data line is the for loop index. We get the actual one positioned index. And then we can say here is this data set line. Then we have the quantity. Here again, we need something to define the quantity. Let's use again a data attribute. Let's go in here again and say data quantity is item quantity minus 1 because we are at the minus button. We can simply copy this and say here plus. And for the remove button, it's simply 0. Because we click on something, it's the event target. Also put the event of the click. And here we have the data set quantity. And since we want to refresh the cart again, we need the sections custom cart draw section again. Then we can use basically the same fetch approach as from the ATC button. We just need to change the actual endpoint to change.js. Then take the form data inside of the body. And here again, we dispatch the new cart re-render event with the actual data and the bubbles. Now, when we go back in here, open the drawer and click on plus, we can see it changes to plus and the cart gets refreshed. The same here, we also can remove something. The cart re-render event is super handy. You can reuse it everywhere you want because you set it up once here in the custom cart drawer where it takes the new markup and replaces it with the old and just call it wherever you want. And the same goes for the cart update or cart clear action. Just go into the documentation, check how the data needs to be formatted, put it into the fetch, take the response and call the event. To show you that the re-rendering also works with multiple sections, let's try to re-render also this cart item count in here. What we therefore need to do is again create a section. Let's call this custom cart count. And in here we can simply say span plus cart item count and then just the cart item size because we only need the cart item size. After creating the section, we of course need to fetch it in our functionality. And here we need to go to sections and say custom cart count, also in our cart actions. And to replace it, we of course need to select it and select the cart item count. Here is this cart count. It's document query selector because it's not in the element itself. And in the cart re-render, we can also do another fake element. Let's say fake count const new count. It's the custom cart count section. Then of course replace it. And lastly, we can say this cart count in HTML is fake count query selector because we have this element in here in HTML. When we reload now, we have 3, add this to the cart. Now we have 4. And if we remove something, we have 3 again. Perfect. And you can do this with up to 5 sections. This is basically everything you need to know to build a dynamic experience with the Cart API. Now for the last step, I want to show you how to build a neat discount input in the cart drawer. Let's go. Shopify actually released a new update discounts functionality in the cart with the last editions of summer 2025. Before that, it was only possible for the customer to input a discount in the checkout, or you would have to do a big workaround in the cart to allow the customer to put a discount in the cart itself. Now this is possible natively, and to show you how, I created again this element in the cart drawer, and yes, I just took the styling of the Horizon theme, but now I will explain what you can do with it. First again, of course, we have the form with the post method. Then of course the cart update URL as the action because the discount update is a update endpoint action. Inside I just have an input for the text and a submit button. And also if we have discounts in the cart, they get shown below the input itself. What we always want to do is create a new class called discount input. And you know the drill, you also have to define it. And then we go ahead and wrap this whole thing in it. Discount input and close the discount input. Since we have this form, we again have to focus on this. I therefore created the submit form variable by selecting the discount form. And then in the connected callback, I added again an event listener of submit to the submit form. And then I call the handle submit, of course, with the event. Since we are submitting a form, we again want to prevent the default so we don't land on the cart page. When we look at the documentation, the data the form accepts is like pretty simple, just the discount parameter with the actual discount. Just create the form data again and put a discount parameter. And in here, we want to have the value that the customer has inputted into the input field. So with this submits form, query selector with the input of name discount, as you can see here, and then the value. Then of course we also again want to have the section so we can re-render the cart, and this form data we can use in the fetch call again. Basically the same fetch call again, just be careful to update the URL. And then of course we can again use the dispatch event and the cart render event. Now when we go into the cart drawer and put BozyDev YouTube discount, which is a 10% discount, you can apply it and you can see it got applied. Also when I go to the checkout now, the discount is applied. The last thing we need to do, of course, is we want to remove the discounts from the cart. We have here these little remove buttons. When we click this, I want to remove the discount. Therefore I can go to my discount input element again. We can say we have these remove buttons where we query select all the buttons with this class, and in the connected callback for every remove button we add an event listener. We type click and say handle remove, and the handle remove functionality is basically the same as here, but this time we say the discount is empty. With this we remove all discounts, but I think you get the point. When we reload, we have this functionality. When we click on this X, the discount gets removed. Of course, can add it again. And that is basically how you use the new update discounts functionality in the cart. Now you know how to add items to the cart, change items, remove items, and also update all kinds of stuff in the cart. Since this is a big topic, I hope I could explain everything well to you. But if you have still questions, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching through this whole video. As always, I would be happy if you would subscribe to my channel because I take a lot of time creating these videos to teach you something so you get better. Maybe you didn't know this, but I'm actually working on my own Shopify Developer Academy where I want to teach you how to become a Shopify developer, or at least better at it. If you're interested, go to the description and sign up. Lastly, of course, you can also check out my Discord community where I try to build a community solely for Shopify developers. We have good talks, help each other out. If you're interested, come join. See you next time. Bye bye.